Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Allie, and I did my IIP project on concussion management. Specifically as it pertains to public high schools in the United States, and I wanted to analyze the management in terms of the return to learn process as compared to the return to play process. I wanted to really just analyze the students' transition back into the classroom. The reason why I'm studying this is partly personal. My sophomore year, I got a really bad concussion and I was out of school for about a month, and my return to learn process was definitely a big struggle and a big challenge. And while I'm like normal and healthy today, I definitely have seen its effects on my academic career. Another reason why I'm studying this though is that it's also a hot topic. I'm sure you guys have all seen the NFL headlines and the World Cup, and even at the high school level, people are saying we're in a concussion crisis right now, especially as we're starting to understand the effects of concussions. This is the Google Trends of the word concussion in the United States. What that means is that Google is tracking how many times people are entering concussions into the search box. And as you can see, within the past 10 years, it's on a general upwards trend, and it's even expected to increase too. So in terms of the research process, I looked at a lot of different sources. I looked at databases, which were especially helpful. I looked at scientific journals with scientific studies. I looked at hospital websites. I looked at government websites. Center for Disease Control was a big one. I also kind of used the resources here at Stanford. The staff members were all incredibly helpful. I went to 3 separate libraries here: the Lane Medical Library, the Green Library, and the Education Library. They were all helpful because I was able to look at the scholarly work from the different perspectives, the medical perspective versus the education perspective. And it also really has improved my research skills too. They taught me about how to use the databases to my full advantage, using the clipboard tools, the timelines, keywords, searching by author. It was just all incredibly helpful, and I appreciate that. So I started the research process by asking myself questions about what I wanted to analyze on the topic. So for like the current laws, how did the current laws come to be? Are they being enforced? What are the healthcare professionals recommending? What are their best practices? What is everyone's role in the process? What should teachers be doing? What should parents be doing? School nurses? What should they all be doing? For schools, are they following the mandated protocols from the laws? Are they being enforced? And also for the media too, what is the media reporting? Are they not really covering some major topics that they should be covering? And so what I found early on in the research process was that there was a lot of different sources. I was starting to become overwhelmed with it. One way that I decided to kind of help manage it was I used an index card system where I would write the source number, the title of the article, the authors, and then all of the points that I think I would end up using. I think one of the best parts about the research process is that even if you don't understand my system or if you think it's messy, you don't have to. It's all personal, it's all independent, so it's something that I'm supposed to be able to understand, and then once I understand and organize my work, I can share it with other people. Another thing I did in the research process was I looked for the key people in the field and what they were saying. So with each source, I would also look at the bibliographies, and I would write down the key people that were in the bibliographies and the work that they had produced for that bibliography. In the IIP, we talked about this metaphorical table about discovering who were the experts at the table, what were they contributing to the topic, and why do they deserve to be at that table. And that was just kind of also to help manage help kind of narrow it down and focus it into people who were more specific to what I was studying. And in the end, what I could do was I could take a highlighter and I could highlight all of the names that kept on repeating themselves so that I could get a good idea of who were these main people. And I could also take a yellow highlighter and highlight the main points, the trends, and the patterns, which led to some really interesting discoveries, which was pretty awesome too. The discoveries and patterns that I found was people out there were saying that there wasn't a lot of information. The president recently hosted a conference, and he was saying that there was not enough information out there. The experts who are researching it are saying that there isn't a lot of information out there. That was kind of contradicting what I was saying because I was just overwhelmed with information. Some reasons why I think that is all of the information is new, and I feel like they're not really confident in their information because they want to study it more. So for example, I found studies that were saying that women take longer in the return to learn process and that they should be special focus on them, but in a lot of the consensus statements, the experts in the field didn't want to definitively say that because they wanted to research it more. So while there is a lot of information, they're not really certain about some of it yet. And I also think a lot of the information too isn't readily available to people. I had to really dig through some places to find the information. In the end, I really did find who were the experts at my table. These are some of the main ones, and they've all have contributed a lot of great ideas. They really, in terms of I won't really bore you with the details, but they all kind of recommend that in the return to learn process, it has to be slow and it has to be gradual, and you really need a graduated reentry plan. It has to be a team effort between all staff members. It's all individualized, and I also found too that not only was I able to define my table, but I felt like the field was able to define their own table. Every year, the concussion experts and neurologists have been meeting to create consensus statements. They've been doing it for the past 4 years. They're constantly updating it with new information, which is really great too. I also looked at hospitals and the National Athletic Training Association for their consensus statements too. And I found that they were saying the same things. The consensus statements were really helpful just because they were easy to read and they were very verifiable. This is an example of one of the return to learn plans. As you can see, it's gradual, it takes steps, it takes time. This was from one of the studies too, so it was interesting. Well, I found that hospitals, athletic trainers, neurologists were all saying that it should be gradual and it should be slow. I found that the laws in the United States weren't really reflecting that. Right now, all 50 states have a concussion law. The last one, I believe, was Mississippi. They just passed their law in January. But the laws really catered towards the return to play aspect. The law started in, I believe, Washington when Zachary Lystad, a football player, went back to play after a concussion, and he received terrible neurological damage and is permanently disabled. So after he received that terrible injury, he passed a law in his own state, and they spread across the country. However, because his was dealing with return to play aspects, they didn't really focus on the return to learning aspects, which is huge because concussions affect your both athletic ability and your cognitive ability. and really only 3 states have academic accommodations. I found that the laws were being reflected in the knowledge of healthcare professionals because they're not really being trained on it. I found that athletic trainers didn't really know about the academic accommodations. Physical therapists didn't really know about the academic accommodations. And I also found that a lot of places, too, aren't really required to have athletic trainers, which is especially huge because many sources consider them to be the experts in concussion management in school. So if schools don't even have an athletic trainer, that can definitely affect both the student's ability for return to play and return to school. For what's next, I feel like I need to research a little bit more just to make my cases stronger. There's still a lot of information out there that I haven't been able to go to, and I also, I kind of really want to bring awareness to these gaps. They are huge gaps, and they do have big impacts on people. I just think it's really interesting because there's new information coming out each day. It really is a hot topic, and I've enjoyed studying it because of how interesting and new it is too. So now I'll leave it up to questions.
So, if all these people are talking about how we should return like slowly and gradually, why, you said that it makes sense for the return to play, but the return to learn, why has this not like caught on? Why is it only in 3 states?
I think a lot of that was, the first law was kind of focused on return to play, and that was kind of more of an immediate thing too, because you could see people were becoming disabled permanently, and whereas with the return to learn, it's kind of like you don't really see the effects until after it happens, and it's less immediate too. It's a long-term struggle. For me, it was a long-term struggle too, personally. And laws are being updated too. I feel like also some of it is just time with the information. Connecticut recently updated their laws, not for academic accommodations, but for more return to play accommodations too.
When was the case in Washington? I mean, how long ago?
I want to say 2010, but I'm not really sure.
So all those laws have been passed in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up to confirm too, but.
Right, so a short period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you had the big kind of step-by-step return to learn process, I noticed that there's no time frame for any of those. Have you found any sources with recommended time frame, or is it also open-ended?
Well, there definitely are some recommendations. I hear a lot 5 to 7 days with returning to school, but the issue with concussions is that they're all individual. There are a lot of varying factors. Gender was one of them, age is one of them. Also too with concussions is, when I got mine, my doctor told me that you don't know how severe the concussion is until after you have had it, because the symptoms are going to vary between different people, and their levels and ability is going to vary. So it really has to be all individualized, which is why it also has to require a team effort to try and get that student back into the classroom. And it also varies on like how the concussion was received, which you don't really know or keep track of too. Sometimes it's, a direct contact, sometimes, it's just a whip to the head, which can affect it too.
Did you find out any of the up-to-date information on the physiological change that causes the concussion?
What do you mean by physiological?
So, like, what happens in the brain with the cells and the connections?
Yeah, there definitely was a lot of information about what was happening. I'm not really a neurologist, so I didn't really understand a lot of the vocabulary words that they were using. But that definitely did show up. I just wasn't trained enough to really understand it. So, yeah.
I thought it was kind of like an urban legend that after you get a concussion, you're more prone to more severe concussions after that. So like the second or third can be so much worse. Did you find that as kind of a risk factor in the return to learn process?
That's definitely a risk factor. That they definitely have been stating that you are more prone to it too. They also showed some signs that like you can be more like long term. There's been stuff about Alzheimer's and dementia. Short term, especially with adolescents, they've been talking a lot about depression and other emotional. People get withdrawn from their peers because they're out of school for so long. Social issues and stuff like that too. That's been showing up a lot.
Thank you.